So we're starting our next session, which is officially the 3:40 p.m. Agriculture Solo, which is running a few minutes behind schedule, not least because of my own delay. So thank you all. I will just get us started, and I'm sure we'll get more people trickle into the room as we go. So for this agriculture solo, it's titled Connecting the Last Mile Through Blockchain Technology and Digital Utility Tokens. So actually very topical in light of the panel we've just had. And we have Harrison Burns, who is a partnerships manager at Ag Unity. Harrison is responsible for identifying strategic partnerships as well as investigating and analyzing opportunities to expand and grow the Ag Unity community. Harrison, prior to Ag Unity, focused primarily on consulting for large-scale infrastructure investments and transactions, and now he will talk to us a little bit about tech in agriculture. Just before, Harrison, you come up, there will be a person potentially coming up in about 20 minutes. Her name is Marcelina Gaoses, and she's founder and director of Myrtle Growth Capital, based in Namibia. I'm not entirely sure if this is in person or virtual, but it is set to happen in this room. And she is a financial sector expert with local and international experience across Africa. And she's passionate about funding sustainable solutions to reduce wealth inequality in Africa, especially amongst women and youth. So before that, we do have Harrison, partnership manager at Ag Unity. Thanks, Harrison. I will just...
Thank you very much. I would like to start by describing a scenario that we at Ag Unity have witnessed firsthand, and one that smallholder farmers living in poverty throughout Africa would be very familiar with. This is Mabruka. She lives on just a couple of acres of land in Ethiopia, where she grows food for her family and coffee beans for income. Every day, Mabruka faces challenges that are very difficult for you or I to appreciate. When Mabruka harvests her coffee, to sell it, she must carry it on a long trek into town. And when she gets there, she might find out that the price of coffee is actually much lower than what it was last year. Or she might also find out that she can't actually sell it at all because, for whatever reason, the buyer doesn't have enough physical cash to pay for it. While she's waiting for the buyer to return to a bank and then come back to the village, which might be days or even weeks later, she watches her harvest deteriorate in quality, and sometimes it might even completely spoil. If she is lucky enough to sell it, she has to accept what would be her full year's income right there on the spot in cash. And because she doesn't have a bank account, she then has to store that at home, which is extremely stressful and sometimes dangerous, particularly for women farmers. Smallholder farmers like Mabruka face challenges like this throughout the entire season. Unreliable paper-based record keeping makes it very difficult for smallholder farmers to transact with confidence. Inefficient communication is one of the major reasons why 1/3 of agricultural produce is lost or wasted. A lack of market linkages means that 80 to 90% of agricultural produce in developing countries trades on informal markets, where farmers are price takers. The FAO estimate that over 75% of smallholder farmers have no access to reliable advisory services. 1.7 billion adults around the world do not have a bank account, and majority of these are smallholder farmers. Additionally, the GSMA estimate that less than 20% of smallholder farmers are covered by any type of insurance. And finally, a lack of awareness and distribution channels makes it very difficult for high-quality farming inputs to reach the last mile, like drought-resistant seeds, for example. All of these issues relate to an inability of smallholder farmers to receive and communicate information in an efficient and trustworthy way. So what's the solution? This Ag Unity phone right here, with the Ag Unity blockchain-based application, provides smallholder farmers with the tools that they need to lift themselves out of poverty. The smartphone provides the efficiency and blockchain provides the trust. Using this solution, smallholder farmers can transact whilst offline using QR codes. The details of those transactions are recorded using blockchain technology, which means that everyone can trust that information. They can communicate with their cooperatives and have their harvest picked up as soon as it's ready. They can access learning modules or weather forecasts. They can use the data that they've generated from their transactions to access microfinance or other financial services. And they can shop online for high-quality farming inputs or other products. This solution is Alibaba, Amazon, and M-Pesa for smallholder farmers. The reason it works so well, there's two reasons. The first is that it's the first solution that is designed specifically for first-time technology users. The user interface uses large, bold icons, geometric shapes, and primary colours, so that even people that have never even seen a smartphone before are able to use it with just 20 minutes of training. The integration of blockchain is also important because blockchain is a way to store data in a transparent and unalterable way. This is critical for operating in communities that are often subject to issues of mistrust, corruption, and fraud. So simply put, before Ag Unity, farmers would often watch their produce rot on the side of the road. Afterwards, they're able to organise for their harvest to be picked up as soon as it's ready. Before Ag Unity, the farmer would often get a very low price, and the buyer would have to absorb a lot of risk relating to the produce quality. Afterwards, the price is maximised for the farmer and the quality is maximised for the buyer. And finally, the farmer, before using Ag Unity, the farmer would worry about storing cash at home and they would struggle to save. Afterwards, they can choose to be paid out in instalments throughout the year, and they can use their transaction history to access microfinance or insurance. So just how many people would actually benefit from a solution like this? To put it into context, the population of Africa is 1.2 billion. If we include just sub-Saharan rural Africa, the population is 667 million. If we include an approximate working age only, that's 367 million. 330 million of those rely directly on smallholder farming for their income. And 260 million of those are unable to use mobile internet or access digital services. If we include their direct dependents, that's 473 million people that would benefit from this solution in Africa alone. That's 40% of the population of Africa. So simply rolling this solution out to hundreds of millions of farmers by giving out free smartphones is not a feasible option. But the question is, can these smallholder farmers, who often live off just a couple of dollars per day, afford to pay for this? When we conducted a pilot project in Ethiopia, we gave this solution to 60 farmers for a trial period. At the end of the trial, we gave them an option. You can choose to either pay for this solution on a suitable financing plan, or you can choose to give it back. 59 out of the 60 farmers chose to pay for it, and they have all since successfully made their first instalment. In fact, out of the 8 countries that we work in, every time that we ask the farmers what value they put on this, they consistently quote a figure that's much higher than it costs us to get it to them. So what are the remaining barriers then? Well, there are 2 key ones. There's a lack of capital for solution providers to fully build out their products, and there's a lack of suitable financing options for the product users, the smallholder farmers in this case. According to the Centre for Global Development, $48.4 billion was deployed in development finance in 2018. How much of that do you think went to what the UN defines as least developed countries? Just 5%. And for context, there's 33 countries in Africa that are defined as least developed. So why is that the case? When the Centre for Global Development asked that very question, they were provided two answers: lack of market size and difficulty in finding investment opportunities. We know from my earlier slides that there are hundreds of millions of farmers that are willing to pay for useful products. And there are more and more startups with real unicorn potential, like but not limited to AgUnity, that are entering this market every year. But we've identified 3 additional barriers to increasing the flow of capital to this market. Sending money across borders into unbanked remote communities can come with high costs and fees. Agricultural value chains are primarily cash-based, and the Better Than Cash Alliance recently estimated that the risks and inefficiencies associated with this can reduce revenues by 19%. And there's a lack of transparency, which can make it very difficult for funds to justify investments. A recent Intertrust survey found that 64% of funds expect their investors to be demanding greater transparency over the next decade. A digital utility token has the power to remove these last 3 barriers. With a digital token, cross-border transaction fees are eliminated, and the token is received by the intended beneficiary within a matter of seconds. They don't even need to have a bank account, they just need to have access to the internet. If agricultural value chains were to use a digital token to transact, that would instantly improve their profitability by removing the risks and inefficiencies associated with cash-based value chains. And with a digital token, you can have complete transparency over who receives that token and how it is being used. So not only does using a token increase ROI, it makes it easier for funds to raise capital. So that's how a digital token can increase the flow of capital to this market. But in order to actually create a successful token, the recipient needs to be able to either cash it out for their local currency, or they need to be able to use it to buy something useful online. That's why in July this year, AgUnity was in the perfect position to launch Agriet, a digital utility token that provides a non-cash payment system with the last mile. We were able to do this because we've spent the last 5 years building this ecosystem. We provide smallholder farmers, unbanked smallholder farmers, with a way to access the internet, and we provide them with a way to use a digital token, which is to pay for their AgUnity smartphone. The first use case of Agriet is simply explained like this. You can purchase Agriet online through an entity that we've set up called Aggregator that handles the buying and selling of the tokens. You can then choose to send that Agriet directly to a farmer or farming cooperative. The farmer can watch that Agriet accumulate in their wallet, and they can use it to make repayments on their AgUnity smartphone. They can do that already, but there will also be other use cases like paying for school fees or buying fertiliser or other products. And finally, AgUnity sells that Agriet back to the aggregator, at which point it will become available for purchase again. To see exactly how this works for yourself, I encourage you to scan the following QR code. In preparation for this conference, we already completed step 1 by purchasing $200 worth of this digital token. And if you scan that QR code, the first 200 people that do that are able to complete step 2 by sending $1 worth of Agriet directly to a real farmer. The reason this is so revolutionary compared to other philanthropic initiatives is because you as the sender can verify that 100% of the value reaches the intended beneficiary. And you can also verify that all of that value is used to buy a product that will help them become more profitable and productive for years to come. One of the reasons why this is so impactful can be explained with the following figure that we've built up from a World Economic Forum study. For a typical cup of coffee that costs $2.80, just 7 cents of it makes it back to the farmer. As much as coffee brands and cafes would like to give their farmer a fairer deal, the reality is that they often don't have the transparency to connect with their farmer. Agriate changes this. With just the scan of a QR code, a consumer can see exactly which farmer grew their coffee, and they can choose to tip them, say 20 cents. That might be an inconsequential amount for the consumer, but it represents an almost 300% increase in revenue for the farmer, which is life-changing. That's just one use case of Agriate, but it actually represents a more efficient way to perform any transactional payment with or within the last mile, including commodity purchases, product sales, financial services, and foreign aid. Those 4 types alone combine for $5 trillion worth of transactions every year. So to summarise, affordable smartphones and very simple applications of blockchain technology have enormous potential for impact in the last mile. They can connect smallholder farmers to the digital economy. They can build trust and help them become more productive and profitable. Agriate helps to increase the flow of capital into these markets and closes the financing gap. The combination of these two presents a truly unique opportunity to set a new standard in transparent, long-term, value-driven investing, whilst changing the lives of hundreds of millions of people. And the good news is that now is the perfect time to get involved, because after an oversubscribed friends and family round, the Agriate pre-sale tranche A is now open, where participants receive 2 free tokens for every 1 purchased. If you're interested or you just want to learn more, please feel free to reach out at harrison@agunity.com or just come up and say hi. I also have a number of business cards with the same QR code that I showed on the screen before, so if you missed out on that, please feel free to come up and give it a try. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. But otherwise, yeah.
Very interesting. I went to see that Swedish International Development Days.
Okay.
Okay. Hi. Thanks for the presentation. It was very interesting to hear how you can leverage technology to this sector. I was just trying to give a token, but transaction failed. Too much money was given. What does that mean?
To the farmer?
Yeah.
So the farmers, so at the moment we've got about 170 farmers registered, and there's, as you can imagine, there's a lot of kind of ethical considerations that you have to make. Mm-hmm. At the moment we've capped the farmer's ability to receive tokens up to $75. So the maximum a farmer can receive is $75 until we reset that amount. So there'll always be other farmers that haven't received that amount. The reason we do that is to ensure that if we register some farmers, they're not getting left behind and everyone is choosing certain farmers. That can happen, unfortunately, because sometimes when we do register farmers, they prefer not to have their picture taken for completely understandable reasons. Unfortunately, that does mean that most people tend to pick farmers with pictures when they send rewards, and so it can end up a little bit different. So we try to at least make sure that no one gets left behind without playing, without deciding ourselves who it goes to. So you might have to choose, sorry to answer your question, okay. You might have to choose a different farmer that hasn't reached their cap.
Okay, so just out of curiosity, what is, the company Agriate, what is, what's your funding and what's your...
Yeah, so Agunity is the startup I work for, which is a for-profit social enterprise. Agunity started Agriate, which is, so Agriate Foundation Limited is a non-profit foundation. They're both headquartered in Australia. Agriate then has launched the digital token Agriate, which you can purchase during this pre-sale. So the foundation itself has launched the token.
Okay, and who's behind the company?
Who's behind Agunity?
Yeah.
It's a startup, so it's self-funded mostly. There's seed funding as well, and we're taking on seed funding at the moment, and we'll be looking for Series A in Q1 next year. So our founder is David Davies, CEO. If he watches the video, I better make sure I say his name.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got quite an extensive experienced team. They come from investment banking and made up also of NGO professionals. So yeah, please feel free to as well if anyone wants any more information to reach out, and we're certainly happy to have more calls. I'm getting a timeout signal from the back, so I better conclude it now. But thanks very much for your time, and please come up and say hi if you have any more questions.